Okay, good evening, everyone. Welcome back to our Hilchah Shabbos class. So we're moving on with those malachas that deal with fabrics. We talked about last week. We talked about coloring and all that kind of thing. Another malachas. Today we'll move on. We'll quickly go through the next four malachas in this process, and then we'll elaborate a little longer on the malacha of tying. So we'll start with the next four, with first being teiva. Teiva means twining, spinning, twining. In the Mishkan, this was done in the process of making threads for making the fabrics. They had to twine the threads and spin them, and that became, of course, therefore prohibited on Shabbos and Yom Tov. So, what would be the practical example of this kind of malacha? Where it would be in our life? For example, we don't really spin threads. We're not. It's more today's industrial. That's not something we do. As the next four malachas are also today something that we almost have we don't really do those things. So this we'll go through quickly. But we do have an area which is practical. For example, yitzitzis, the strings of yitzitzis, yeah? A lot of times over time, the tzitzis start to, the strings, the strands, begin to start unwinding. They start loosening the actual thread. So what do? You want to strengthen them and put them back the way they should be, right? This is a malacha. You're not allowed to do it. That would be considered teiva. Doing that would be prohibited. Or, for example, making wicks out of cotton. So I make my own wicks, for example, on Chanukah. I don't buy wicks, I make my own. I take cotton balls and I make wicks.
From cotton balls?
From cotton balls, yeah. I learned it from my father. He made his wicks for Chanukah. He didn't buy it not because it was cheap to buy wicks. First of all, there was a time probably you couldn't buy these wicks. Today everything is in the stores, you can buy. But he wanted to make it own. It showed a certain love for the mitzvah when you make your own wicks. So I'm also teaching my kids to do the same. So we make our own wicks. So to take cotton and stretch it out, and then make it into a wick, that is the malacha of teiva. That was spinning a thread or a wick or whatever. So this is the practical aspect. Therefore, you have to be careful with that. Strands that begin to loosen, and you twine them together again. This is basically the malacha of teiva. The next malacha in the preparation of fabrics is meisach. So the next ones are like this. There are four malachas involved in the making of fabrics which were made in the Mishkan. So of course it became prohibited on Shabbos. Meisach, oise shnei batei nirin, oireg and peitzeya. In English, meisach, the first one is to warping. You know what that is? You don't know what it is because almost no one does that today. How did they weave a fabric together in the ancient times? They had a board, two poles, and then they would set up, how do you weave? You have threads going this way, and you have threads then going back under and back, going this way, right? That's what makes up your shirt, your pants. That's what makes up every single fabric under the sun. Unless it's put together differently. There are other ways to put together fabrics. But that's the most common way that fabrics are put together, is with the threads going both ways. Or if you make a basket, what do you call it?
Weave.
Of a reed basket, right? So you have them going this way and the others going that way, and that's what makes up the basket. Like a shalach manas basket. What is it made? How does it made? Well, that's how it's made. Yeah. So that is, so that's not there. That's weaving. We're not there yet. But the way to do it is in the olden days, they used to have two poles, and they would set up the threads going this way first, over the poles, the warp threads, and then they would make, but they needed a loom, there was a method that they would make, they lifted it up, a thread went that way. They lifted it that way, it went back, and that's how it went. So the warp threads were on a mechanism that was lifted up and lifted down, and then they would loop in the other end. There was a machine, not a machine, of course, but a wood. In a sense, it was like some kind of a method that they did it. So these things, of course, are prohibited to do on Shabbos. So to set up the warp threads is mesech, and to set up the method with the what are the other threads called in English? I'm losing it. What? No, it's the warp, and in Hebrew it's Shasi and Erev. Forget how it's called in English. Weft. The weft. Okay. The warp and the weft. That's what it's called.
W-E-F-T? Wow.
Yeah, I remember hearing a different name for it. But that's how you weave. So it's going this way and that way. So the mechanism, you know how to do that. Then once the mechanism is made, then of course the actual weaving. The weaving itself is of course prohibited. And therefore, you're not allowed to so that's basic. I mean, weaving, of course, you're not allowed to. You're not allowed to weave on Shabbos. And therefore, women that do all kinds of, what do you call those?
Crochet,
needle
point.
Yeah, you're not allowed to do that on Shabbos, of course. So it's obvious. Okay. And then there's the fourth one. Then there's weaving, so that's the third. And Peitzeya is the fourth. Peitzeya is unraveling. What is unraveling? Once it's made, so there's different understandings of the word Peitzeya. I'll give you both. Once you have the fabric made, because you weaved it together, so without machines, it was like, it was not exactly so even, and so, it was a little higher and low. So they used to bang it out and straighten it out. To straighten out so that everything is properly in place. Even after you put the threads through, you think of it, imagine it, you're doing it by hand, or even by sticks that are going back. It doesn't come out exact. It doesn't end up looking like this right away. You have to bang it out and you have to straighten it out. That's one understanding of Peitzeya, which of course today we don't even know what these things are. You go to a machine, you see what is done. It's not there. But those days, that's how it was done. And unraveling. Unraveling is to separate, I guess, an arigo, to take it apart. That's another understanding of Peitzeya. Okay, so that's of course to separate a fabric and take away the warp threads from the weft threads is prohibited. Got it? Yeah. Okay.
How is that relevant to what we might do today?
Knitting.
Knitting, unraveling a knit. I mean, this could all. Why not? I could see that.
Oh, when you're sitting Shabbat table.
I mean, no one's going to do that.
Yeah,
I mean, they have to sit down and do such a thing.
Yeah.
It's not so practical in our day-to-day Shabbos life. What's that? You mean, or to take apart a basket like a shalach one, if it starts to unravel by itself.
Yeah.
You know what? You don't want to throw the whole basket, so you take it apart and you throw the whole thing on Shabbos. You're not allowed to do that. Or you're not allowed to tighten such a basket if you have loose things. You make. So the truth of that relates really to kosher, the next one that we're going to learn.
For girls, you can make a
braid. Right. You're not allowed to braid hair on Shabbos.
Yeah.
Right? Did you know that?
Yeah.
You're not allowed to undo a braid either. If the girl's hair is braided, you're not allowed to undo it.
People don't know that about braiding.
What?
A lot of people don't know about braiding.
But a lot of people don't know a lot of things. That's why we're doing this. Okay, so let's move on now the subject of kosher. Kosher means tying, knotting, making knots, tying. That's a malacha that's extremely relevant in our day-to-day life, and of course, therefore, in our day-to-day Shabbos life. What is and then there's of course sewing, which we'll learn next week. Sewing is not weaving. Weaving and sewing are two different things, obviously. Sewing is stitching. Weaving is what we just described. We are not going to talk about sewing today. We'll talk about tying. Now, what is the difference between tying and sewing? Essentially, sewing and tying. You're basically tying two things together and making it attached. But the difference is that whereas when you sew, you're taking two entities, two separate things, like a thread, and you're sewing, putting a button onto a jacket. You're sewing a button onto a jacket. So basically, you're sewing those threads into the jacket, where they become one entity. It's no longer two separate entities. It becomes one part of the fabric. It turns two entities into one. Whereas by tying, it's not true. When you're tying two threads, two ropes together, they remain two separate entities because you can untie it and so on. In sewing, it becomes part of the of the jacket or the shirt, whatever it is that you're sewing, or you're sewing a torn. You have a torn hem, and you're sewing the hem back together. So that you're basically taking the threads and the two parts, and you're making it one, with no intention to ever. They become one entity. That's just the basic difference. Perhaps that's not such a halachic difference. We'll talk about the halachic parameters of tying today in very great detail. Let's begin. What is the basic thing of kosher? Taking two different things and tying them together. Yeah? Basic. Now, what kind of tying together is prohibited? So the rabbis, there's of course the biblical. Sorry about that. So naturally, how do you take care of that? So the rabbis discuss what is the biblical halacha, what's the biblical prohibition, what is rabbinically prohibited. I'm not going to get into that so much now because it makes no difference really in our practical life. For us, they're both prohibited. You have to know what's prohibited and what is permitted. That's what's important here. So, in terms of knots that are tying that is prohibited, so the rabbis talk about a kesher umon, which means a skilled knot, a knot that a skilled person would knot. It's a special knot. There's different types of knots that are done in a skilled way, as opposed to a knot that is not skilled, and we'll discuss them. Now, we don't, today it became, the halachic authorities discuss what exactly did the rabbis mean by a skilled knot. And there's no consensus, 100%. What there is consensus is, therefore, because of the doubt, the skilled knot would be any kind of knot that is strong enough that it's strong and remains for a long time. It's meant to be permanent for a longer time. Not just you're going to do it for an hour and then untie it. It's a skilled knot, meaning it's tight and it's meant for a long time. They give the example in the nose of a camel. They used to pierce the camel's nose and put in a thick rope there and tie it very skilled. And then they would tie onto that loop all kinds of things to pull the thing, but that remained there permanent. That was there forever. So that's just an example. On a boat, to pull the boats, in those days, to pull the boats in, they would have something that was on the edge of the boat, and they made a good loop, a tight knot, and on top, and then that, they would make long ropes to pull it in, and to anchors, and all kinds of things. But today they probably have that, yeah. So a kesher uman, a skilled knot, is a knot by a skilled person, is one that would remain for a long time and is strong. Then there's another category of knots that is prohibited, when that is kesher shel kayoma, a knot that is meant to stay permanently. Okay? So the first one is that it's tight and is meant, and therefore it'll stay for it. And then there's a knot that the person is making it for permanently. He has in mind to make it permanently. It's such knots that are meant for permanent. So these are the two, tight and permanent. So that's obviously biblically prohibited. What would be considered a tight knot, a knot that is permanent? A double knot, for example. You take two strings, and you loop them together, and then you loop them again, and you tighten the knot. Here, here's an example, right here. How are tzitzis made? So one of them, so you make one knot, and then you make a second one. And now that stays. That's a very tight knot. But the reason it's not so tight over here is because there are four strings together. So four strings that it becomes a little thicker, so that it could loosen up. But imagine you take just two, and you tie them together. Like, for example, when you needle a thread, you put a thread through a needle for someone that's sewing. So what do? You take the two edges, and then you tie them double, so that it can, right?
Mm.
So there's something that, they pull the babies, the babies, they have a string. The babies, walking babies, like a leash, right?
A leash for a baby, really?
No,
No, they do. That's in the malls, and also I saw
I
that.
never saw it.
Yeah. For the shul also, I saw that, some people, they, pull their kids.
Not a leash.
So I was wondering if it's allowed.
You're allowed to pull, but you're not allowed to tie
You
it.
haven't seen?
I've seen it.
Yeah?
It's
Yeah.
a leash, they have
It's
it.
pretty unnerving, actually.
So it's, so they want to follow.
On their neck or on their foot?
Yeah.
On
No,
their
it's
hand?
around their body.
It's
It's around their
around
body. And,
So don't get too far away.
In
exactly.
the street?
Yeah.
The mall.
Oh,
And even in the mall. And
Really?
How old? Like
Yeah,
2 years old.
One
yeah.
or two.
The ones that they start walking,
Yeah.
toddlers.
Dogs, kids, it's all the same. It's part of the family, right?
No, seriously, are you allowed to do such a thing or not?
To hold a leash, there's no problem. You're not allowed to make the leash. You're not allowed to tie the leash on a double knot.
you're
So the
not
double
allowed-
knot, by the way, a kesher shel kayoma, is the double knot is prohibited even if it's not tight, even if you're not tightening it tight, because, but that, generally speaking, when a person makes a double knot, it's for permanent. So permanent knot is not allowed. A double knot is not allowed even if it's not tight, because it's permanent. You'll
But if
see
it's
soon
on
that there
Shabbos,
are
they had to
times
make it- they
that
had
a
to
double
make
knot could
if
be.
they did that. If they
No, they can have it before. And then
before, yeah.
like dress
What
it
about
on the child.
chadura? You have a
We'll
belt.
talk about that. We'll talk a belt. Yeah, a belt,
Ah,
like a raincoat belt. So you tie it once, and then you want to tie it again. So there's
Like
room
a
for
gato,
leniency
no?
there. A gato people usually tie it a different way. They don't really make a knot. by
No.
a gato, yeah. Now, if even if it's one thread, and you're tying it onto itself, you're making a knot on itself, like by if you have like for example a hood lace, it's pulled to the hood, right? So if it starts falling out, so what do people do? They make a little knot on each side, so it doesn't go doesn't go in too much, right? So it can never go in.
Right.
So you just have to pull it, but it can never get lost inside, right? They knot it on the outside so it doesn't fit through. So that's a knot on itself. It's not taking two different strings and tying them together. They're making a knot on itself. That's also prohibited because it's meant for a long time. Oh, because over there you don't need two. One knot is enough on itself. You understand? And therefore, these strings of tzitzis, like I just did, or even at the end of the tzitzis. For example, if these start coming apart, so what do people, this is a knot on itself. When you take, here I can give you the example. You take this, and you put it in here, and then you pull this. One knot is going to stay there forever, right? You pull this strong, it stays forever. So what do people do when these start coming apart? They do exactly that. They make a little knot in and never comes apart. That's so that you're not allowed to do on Shabbos, of course. And I just did it.
I think it's not Shabbos, though.
No, but I don't want to have a knot here. Yeah, so that's that. A hood lace onto itself, you're not allowed to do that, right? Those are the types of knots you're not allowed to do. Or to take two strings and tie them together, right? So you tie the one like that. So one knot is not going to really keep this together. So you do it again. That's a double knot, so that's what keeps it together. So.
You cannot tie a shoe on Shabbos.
No, we're not there yet. I'm talking about permanent knots. Okay. These are meant to be for a long period of time. So you're not allowed to do that. What about a knot that is not meant for permanent? The purpose of the knot is just to do it for now. So what's not considered permanent? It's less than 24 hours. In this context, a kesher that is not permanent is something that is done for less than a 24-hour period.
Tying your shoes would be an example.
Wait a minute. So tying your shoes, you're not really making a knot. You're making a bow knot. It's a bow. Really, that's what it is. You're doing a dot. What you're looping them together first, like one, and then instead of going again and making another knot, you're making a bow. Now, a bow is not really a knot because you pull it together. It's undone in no time. So therefore, this type of bow on a shoe is permitted.
What if you double knot it?
Not allowed. No. A double bow is also prohibited. A lot of times kids have long shoelaces. So what do? You bow it once, and then you do a second bow. That's prohibited. A lot of people don't know that. That's not permitted.
Velcro.
Huh?
Velcro, that's a key.
And the truth is, twining together, taking two threads, two ropes, and twining them together. Making it into one thread. That's also kosher. Because you're basically tying them together. Yeah, you end up like that. So it's tied together. That's also prohibited. Now what happens if you make a bow knot, but you're making it permanent? Not in shoes, but something else. You're not allowed to do that. That you're not allowed to do. So bow knots are not automatically permitted. It depends if you're doing it for permanent or not. Depends on the person. If you're doing it permanent, you're not allowed. If you're doing it for like shoes, which is meant to take off. Now, to take two strings, and make one knot, one loop. That's not going to hold. That's permitted. This is not a knot. Because one doesn't hold. Right? You follow?
Yeah.
But on itself, that's not. Like I said before, to take one string and make a knot on it on its own, on itself, that knot. On two, it doesn't keep, but on one, on itself, it will.
Yeah.
So that's why it's not allowed. So, for example, in a garbage bag. So how do you tie a garbage? You got to empty out the garbage bag on Shabbos. So usually the new garbage bags that you buy in Publix, so it comes with like a little strings. You pull out, and when you're ready to tie, you make one knot, and what do you do next? You make a second knot, and then you pull it out and put it in the big dustpan, on the big garbage can in the garage. That's a prohibition on Shabbos, to make a double knot. And in the old garbage cans that they didn't have strings, what are these big garbage cans like you have in the industrial bar garbage bags? What do you do? So you grab all the sides together, and you make a knot onto itself, one knot, right? Also prohibited. That's one knot on itself is not good.
Yeah.
It's not permitted.
Yeah.
You understand?
Yeah, but what if you didn't do it with permanence in mind?
It is done with permanence. One knot is permanent. It's hard to undo a knot like that. Why would you? Who's planning to open up the garbage can?
The cat.
Well, that's not the what. I mean, so it is
Well,
permitted.
yeah, but it's not like a double knot
One knot is also prohibited on itself.
on itself. Okay.
If it's two different parts that you're making one knot, it's nothing.
Okay.
But you're taking the whole thing and looping a knot onto itself and tightening, and that's not it's not permitted. You see the difference, yeah?
Yeah, now I see.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned before like a chagura, a sash, that like, for example, you have a raincoat and it comes with a belt. So you tie it, and then you make a second knot, but it's loose, and you're coming for 50 minutes, you can take it out. So that is not, because you're not tightening it. It's to begin with a loose knot. So it's not, and you're doing it so impermanent, so it's not a problem. Although I don't do that. I just leave it one knot. I try to make only one. Because just in case you're going to really tie it, by mistake, you can give it a good pull and it becomes a tight knot. That's a problem. So I just do one knot, I just wrap
It's
it.
really not a knot, is it?
If it's double, it's a knot.
Oh.
Why not a knot? Why?
Yeah, if you double.
I'm talking about if it's only one, it's nothing.
Yeah.
And then you just tuck it in the side.
Right.
There's nothing to that. That's not a knot.
How about a tie? I guess you can't put
Tie. A tie, you're allowed to, because the tie, what's a tie? You take this and you pull it right out. It's not really a knot. It's not a knot because you're doing it in such a way where you're pulling it right out. It could be pulled right out.
Yeah.
So it's not really a knot. So you're allowed to make a necktie on Shabbos. How about a tichel? You know what a tichel is?
No.
A tichel is, how do you say a tichel? Is like what women wear in their houses. A head covering, but on go out you put on a sheitel. But in the house, you just want to cover your head, so you put on a tichel. So some of these tichels are like this. So you grab the ways, you put it on your head, and then the back, you tighten it, right? So sometimes you make a double knot. If it's only one, it's going to come right off, and you don't want it to come off. So you make a double knot here. And then the two pieces hang over here, on the back, wherever. Yeah. That's prohibited on Shabbos, to make a double knot. Unless you're going to open it. So it's l'chatchila not made. In other words, if you take it, some women, when they put on a tichel, every time they go through the exercise of making the double knot. So that's not permanent. It's like a coat. But some women, they make the double knot once, and then it remains that way. They just slip it on and slip it off with the two knots remaining there. So that's prohibited.
Even though they're not making the knot today.
No. If they're making the knot on Friday, but not talking about that. We're talking about they make it on Shabbos. But the intention is not to undo it, just to slip it off when they don't want to, slip it back on when they do want it. I've seen that too.
That's prohibited.
They already had the permanent.
So if it has already a permanent knot, they have that where you buy it with it.
Sure.
Oh,
Yeah?
I didn't know that.
Sure.
But we don't have those. We have just open
No, they have.
skirt, whatever you call it. It's a nice thing, and then they have a way that they put it on, and then they tie it. So some people, they don't intend to untie it. They just, next time they want to take it off,
They just
slip it off, and the next time they put it back on, and they just, with the knots there. So on Shabbos, to make such a knot, you're not allowed to, if it's double. But if you're going to open it, so l'chatchila you're making it very loose, so you don't have to worry about it. What about an apron? Putting on an apron, yeah, to serve or whatever. So you tie, you have a string in the back. People do make a double knot. You're not allowed to do that. Or a bib, a baby's bib. You tie a bib around the baby's neck. How do you keep it on there? So today they have Velcro, okay, but when it's not a Velcro type of thing. So it's they start one knot that's going to come right off. So you have to make a bow, not a knot. You have to make sure to make bows, not knots. It's very, very important to remember this. And again, a double bow, you're not allowed to. Like I said before, with kids' shoes with their long shoelaces. And if you just make one bow, it'll hang around, they'll step on it. So you want to make it shorter, you make a second bow and a third bow. That's already a knot, so you're not allowed to do that.
Why do they make those shoelaces so long?
What? You can buy short, you go to the store, you have different sizes. How about to strengthen a knot? It's already there, but you want to hear. Look, for example, the tzitzis over here.
Yeah.
So right over here, you see now it's loose? You see how this is a little bit loose?
Right.
So I just go like that. I just strengthen it. I didn't
Can't
make
do
the whole
that
knot.
on
You're not allowed to
Shabbos.
strengthen it. No. On Shabbos, to strengthen it is like making it. And therefore you're not allowed to. How about twist ties? You know those things you buy?
Mhm.
And you buy garbage can, you twist it around a few times.
Yeah.
So there's a machlekes about that. Some say that it's like twining. Because you're twisting it onto each other, it's like twining, so that could be a problem.
But it's only one piece. It's almost like a knot unto itself.
We're not talking about knotting. It's not a problem of knotting. It's not a problem of twining. Twining is teva. It's a different malacha we just mentioned.
I thought I read
Even
Beginning
if
of
it's
class.
only one piece, you're not twining two pieces together. You're twining.
You're twining it onto itself,
Onto
two
itself.
edges.
I think I read you can open it, like if it's bread or something, like pita bread.
Mm.
You can open it, but you can't close it.
Oh.
I don't see
Ah.
why. If you can't close it, then you can't open it. I think the point is, I think what they say is you shouldn't. It's better. There's other opinions that say that it's not a problem because it's not like twining, because it's really. Because the truth is, even if you make one twist, it will hold. Because it's really what's holding it together is the thin metal thing that's under the green or blue paper that's holding. It. So it's not. You're not really. So even one twist will hold it.
Right.
So it's better to do it like that. To just if you're going to do a garbage bag, twist the garbage to just do one, because then you're not getting into any problems.
You're talking about like a bread or a...
Yeah.
No. On bread bags, they have these old. That's what the pita bread has. Those things.
Right.
So it's a problem to take it
A
off.
question. What if you have a bag of cereal, right? And you want to put the rubber band around it?
What?
Close
Yeah,
something. Can you
close
use
something.
One second. Before you go there, I just want to clarify what I'm saying there. Those opinions that say that it's a problem because it's like twining, is if you're doing it for more than 24 hours. If the purpose is to do it more than 24 hours. If it's less than 24 hours, it's maybe a little different, you understand? So, other opinions say that it's not a problem. The opinion that says that it's a problem to twine them, then it's also prohibited to untwine them, because that's also a problem. That's peitzeya, to taking apart, to unravel. Or it's matir, it's not peitzeya, I'm sorry. It would be, we'll learn next week about untying. You're allowed to unknot. You're not allowed to, which we'll get to next week. Just like you're not allowed to knot, you're not allowed to unknot, because in the Mishkan they had to do that too. As I said, so therefore, if you're not, those that say you're not allowed to use those ties, you're not allowed to untie them either. But then there's an opinion that says you could use those ties, because it's not at all, they don't consider it like twining at all, because it's not the same thing. And therefore, the golden rule is that if you can do it for less than 24 hours, it's not the end of the world.
But does it make
it's even better if you just do it once.
That's what I was just going to ask.
What was your question?
So rubber band, sometimes you have a bag and you want to close it and you have a rubber band. Are you allowed to twist it and do double?
Oh, you brought that up. With these twist ties, there's also another way to do it. You take a bag and you just wrap it around like that. Instead of twisting it, you go around and you tighten it like that. So you end up with it's looped around the bag, but you certainly didn't twine anything. So then you can do the same thing with a rubber band also. But to start tying things, for example, a balloon. We'll tie up a balloon and then tie it for your kids to play. And so that's not permitted. You can blow it up, but you can't tie it. So have fun blowing it up every.
Why can't you use that same thing as you do on the pita bread?
That's the twist ties.
Yeah.
So
you can wrap it around. It's best to
on a balloon, I'm saying.
Oh, in other words, then take a twist tie and it's not the air will get at it. It won't hold. It won't hold. That needs a tight. That needs a tight. Could be other problems with the balloon nose.
Yeah.
It's so easy to plot, to pop, and so on. I think that's.
Ah.
Sefer Torah is an interesting thing over there. There's also debate about this. When you're tying the sash around the Torah. So today they have, it's easy because they don't have them.
Velcro.
They just have, we just clip it on. So it's not even, you're not tying it. But in the old, before like 20, 30 years ago, all of them were just a string, a sash, that you had to tie. So we used to make just a bow. But even a bow, if the intention is to be more than 24 hours, it's a problem. It could be a problem. That's what we said before, right? A bow, even a bow, it's more than 24 hours. I mean, your tension is more than 24 hours. That's a kesher shel chayoma. That is a permanent knot. So, in the morning, Torah reading is not a problem because you can open up by mincha.
Yeah.
But after mincha, when you finish the afternoon service, the next time you're going to open it up is on Monday morning. So that's already a fairly, it's more than a day. Especially with shuls that don't have minyan, that only have a minyan on Shabbos. So now you're talking about a whole week. Yeah. That's already that's really permanent. There's differences between a day and a week also. So it's best so some say that's not a problem. This is a mitzvah. And the rabbis didn't make their gezerah, this is a midrabanan, this is a rabbinic type of tie.
Or they give it to a kid to do it and put on a belt?
Kids are not allowed to do Shabbos, violations of Shabbos.
Yeah.
But you're not making a knot, though.
If you make, but even a bow, if it's permanent,
not even a
what then
bow.
are you
Don't you just just do that and not make a knot out
how
of
is
it?
it going to hold? That's not going to hold. One loop, that's not going to hold. You have to tighten it with something. You have to keep it there.
A bow or something?
You have to make a bow. That's what people do. But again, for longer time, from a drabanan, that's a problem. Even a bow tie is a problem if it's more than 24 hours. If your intention is more than 24 hours. Some say that the rabbis didn't make that decree when it comes to a mitzvah. So therefore it's not a problem because it's a Sefer Torah. But others are not so lenient. So the best way to do it is, if you're doing it, today it's not a problem because most of our sashes are Velcro or some other ones. We don't have those. But in those shuls that still have it, it's better to just tuck it in. Take one time, and then tuck it in if you're by mincha. Verstehst? Okay, it's getting late, so we'll stop here and we'll move on. You want?
Very good.